I saw this in the name of the Gra, actually. So it's good to see. This is a little bit of chronology that I made based on, the basic numbers that you get if you take the shot that the Torah is discussing how old everybody was when they had their child and when they died, etc. We have it for all the generations from Adam all the way through Levi. It goes from, we know when Avraham Avinu was born. We basically know it doesn't say that Jacob was so and so years old when Levi was born, but it's something you could derive. Jacob was about 87 years old when Levi was born. Okay, that's something you get, and then you could continue from there. But it doesn't say how old Levi was when Kahas was born, how old Kahas was born when Amr was born. That's not in there. So you already have Seder Olam, which, by the way, is not even agreed upon by all the sages. Okay, that's one Tana's opinion. And you have, let's say, just for starters, you talk about the 210 years of the servitude in Egypt, the sojourn in Egypt, and how that fits with the 400 years or the 430 years. And right there on the page, everybody knows what Rashi says, which fits his understanding of Seder Olam. Then you read Ramban, and Ramban disagrees by a few decades. So it's not agreed upon. So here's an important point that I wanted to stress. You see all the ages of all the heads of the generations in what year from creation in which they were born. And the first and most important fact is that it says Terach was 70 years old when he first had a son. It says Terach had Abraham, Nahor, and Haran. For various reasons, like I explained in previous years, it is certainly not clear that Abraham was then born when Terach was 70. Why? Because from all that we could see, especially based on the Ta'amim and everything else, although it is not explicit in the Torah, it's alluded to in a few places that Abraham, I'll say, well, he wasn't Abraham yet, was the second son of Terach. Nahor was the older one. Avraham Avinu had an older brother. That means Nahor was born in the year 1948. Basically, if you calculate, they say Abraham was born in 1948. That's not so clear. Abraham was born sometime after that. Just like it says Noach was 500 years old and he had Shem, Cham, and Yefes. It says he was 500 and he had Shem, Cham, and Yefes. The problem with that pasuk, which is explicit, is that it turns out from other psukim later, that Noach was actually 502 when Shem was born, and it was Yafes who was born when Noach was 500. It says Noach was 500, just Shem, Cham, and Yefes. You think Shem was first? No, it was just Yefes, and Cham was the youngest, even though he's put second. So it must have been sometime after Noach was 502 when he had Shem. So too, it says Nahor was 70 when Terach was 70 when he had children, and it just throws out 3 children. Not all of them were born at the time. However, and this is what the Gra points out, Haran was the youngest son of Terach. Haran had children, and Haran died. What is the significance of Haran's death? It happened al pnei Terach Aviv. That means Terach was still alive. What's remarkable about that? Unfortunately, some people, they lose children. Haran died during his father's lifetime. What's remarkable is that until that point, since the flood, that hadn't happened in all these generations. That's what the Vilna Gaon's pointing out. You look from starting with Noach and Shem and Arpachshad and the rest of them, until that point, even though we see that their lifespans had greatly decreased. Look over here. Noach lived to be 950. That's the third most of all the people on the list, just short of Jared and Methuselah. Right? Jared's over here at 962, Methuselah at 969 over here. And then you see it gets halved. Shem only lives for 600 years. Arpachshad and Shelach and Aver live for 400 something. And suddenly with Peleg, we drop down to the 200s. Okay, we keep halving it or so, whatever it is. It might be an explanation. Someone knows math better, probably find some other logarithmic rule in here if you could graph it out. What? Yeah. So, but he didn't talk in logarithms, but he basically talks in like, yeah. So if you look over here, here's what's remarkable. Haran died during his father's lifetime. Why? Because of all these patriarchs, of whom I'm highlighting here on the screen, no one had yet to die during their father's lifetime. The first of these patriarchs who actually died while his father was still alive is Peleg. Peleg died in the year 1996 from creation, and while his father Aver was still alive. As a matter of fact, It turns out Noach, Shem, Arpachshad, Shelach, and all of them were still alive. Peleg, who, by the way, still lived to be 239, did not outlive his father. So that was remarkable. That would have been remarkable, but Haran died before Peleg. So that means Haran was born sometime after 1948, but died by the year 1996. How many years are between 48 and 96? 48 years. So this gives us a window. We have to have a window over here for Terach to have Nahor in 1948, and then Abraham, and then Haran, and Haran to have children, and Haran to then die, all before 1996, within a span of 48 years. And if you see, leading up to Haran, except Terach is the exception, all of Haran's ancestors had children in their 30s. Shelach at the age of 35, Aver at 30, Peleg at 34, Reu at 30, Serug at 32, Nahor at the age of 30, Nahor the first, that's the second Nahor's grandfather. Terach at the age of was born when his father was 29. You see, so I would estimate, based on this, that we have a little bit of a window. I would think that Abraham was born basically in the year 1950 or so. Okay, Abraham was born basically in the year 1950 or so from creation, about 2 years after Nahor, and his own little brother was born 2 years after that. So I place Haran in about the year 1952, and he died at 44 years later after having a few children, because it says he had 3 children. So I figure he would start having children about at the age of 30, and then enough time to have 3 children and then pass away. That's basically how I do this, which means that just repeating the line that Abraham was born in 1948, certainly there's a lot of evidence indicating that it is not so. Okay, and there are many Rishonim who don't take that for granted. The second important part, which now connects more to this week's parsha, now we've connected all the first parshas of the Torah, is that this war, Abraham's war against the Mesopotamian kings, Kedor Laomer and Amraphel and Tidal, the rest of them, did not necessarily happen when Abraham was 75. It says he was commanded to go to the land of Israel at the age of 75, and land of Canaan at the time. So there was a Ra'av. Abraham was born in Tishrei, right? Abraham was born in Tishrei, according to our tradition. When you enter Canaan, if you would enter Canaan, let's say Abraham came exactly when he was 75, if you show up around his birthday in Tishrei time, you don't really sense that there's a famine yet. Why? Because the rainy season is about to start. The famine only happens, what? Well, he Ra'av Baretz, after Avram has been in significantly, it says he camped here and he camped there. The Ra'av would have been brought about by the fact that there was a dry season in the coming rainy season. So when you start feeling it, unfortunately, if there was something like this, basically there's very little rain by the time the spring is rolling around, then they have a famine. But Abraham did not stay in Egypt too long. He was kicked out of Egypt and was sent back. Okay? So whatever it is, that eventually he had the dispute with Lot. Remember, it was about grazing land. Remember, when you have a famine going on, or it's just post-famine, you're going to have a little bit of a problem. People are fighting over space, trying to move. Famines cause mass migrations. In history, that's the way it's been. And then it says eventually when Lot moved to Sodom, he chose to live in the Area Kikar. Then there was a war. And it doesn't say necessarily how long after Lot had decided to leave Abraham that the war started. For some reason, people say, no, that war was right away. Lot moved to Sodom, and within that year, Abraham is still 75. That's when the war happened. That's not necessarily true. The next time we hear about Abraham doing something, says he had been 10 years in Canaan. 10 years in Canaan when his wife finally realized, okay, we have to do something about this childlessness. So you have a big window. The war happened sometime between Abraham being the age of 75 and 85. I do not see why you have to stuff it into that busy year of Abraham moving to Canaan and then having a famine and then having to go get kicked out of Egypt and then the whole dispute with Lot and all that. You don't have to push them all together. Rashi did this, by the way. Where do we see this? Rashi pushes 3 events together. He puts the Akedah and the birth of Rebekah and the death of Sarah all into 1 year, basically all happening at around the same time, like really close in time. Whereas, according to other sages, starting from the times of the Mishnah, by the way, they definitely don't say this. It's not. They say it is slightly unreasonable to say that Isaac was a 37-year-old man at the time of the Akedah. It seems more like he was around bar mitzvah age. He was a child or a young teenager. And Rebecca married at the age of 14. She wasn't born then and there when right when Sarah died. Okay, so we don't have that. That's for the parsha, and that's basically pretty dry stuff.